local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
Welcome and good morning. We hope everybody is having a pleasant Thanksgiving weekend. Well, as the New Hanover County School Board struggles to find solutions to the highly polarized issue of redistricting, one of the school board members, Elizabeth Redenbaugh, had a controversial open letter published by the Wilmington Star News to parents opposing the neighborhood school concept without certain other criteria. And that's what, or one of the issues we're talking about with her on this edition of Byline Wilmington. Elizabeth Redenbaugh, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Give us a short capsule of this redistricting issue and the position that you've taken on it.
Okay, we are having to redistrict our middle schools. This is only dealing with middle school redistricting.
Because of numbers and placement of
right, there's overcrowding, and with the 2005 bond referendum, there was money to build a new middle school. So that middle school has been built, and it's out in Castle Hayne, and it's absolutely beautiful. I encourage everyone to go by. We'll have an open house soon to take a look at it. It is amazing. So in order to fill that school and to also decrease overcrowding in our current middle schools, there's 7 currently, so this will make number 8, we have to redistrict.
And that's where all this angst has come from. How that's going to be accomplished.
Absolutely. I mean, as we all know, we're human, and people, as a general rule, don't like change. Change makes us very uncomfortable. So regardless, you know, coming out of the box, you know there's going to be resistance to this because people don't want to change.
And then you've taken a strong position on the issue. I
have. The issue of neighborhood schools, or the lack of diversity that is in our schools, is one of the, or actually is the reason why I chose to run for the school board. That was the issue that thrust me into the race to begin with. So it was one of those. I had received, if you want me to explain the whole email or how it got published, I'd received an email.
Well, let me just tell our viewers that you wrote an open letter to parents.
I did. Actually, it was addressed to one particular parent, but it got copied. I copied our board members and some other parents that I knew that were struggling in some of our downtown inner city schools, and I knew that it would go viral. Did I know that it would end up getting published in the paper? No, absolutely not. But I knew it would go viral because I knew I was taking a strong stand, and I knew that would get forwarded on, as we all know emails do. So the parent that I was responding to, she had written that all parents that support neighborhood schools also support children that are in our struggling downtown schools. And that is true for the most part, but it's part of this job. I hear from people, you know, across the spectrum, and unfortunately had heard from some people that took a different position on that. And so it was one of those things that I wanted to respond back to her on and say, you know, yes, you may feel that way and you may support those students, but there are people that don't. There are people that don't want their children mixing with people of color or people, you know, from a lower...
And these are actual statements that parents have made to you.
Yes, yes. And, you know, and it's very disheartening. It, you know...
But you didn't use...
I did not use the R word. I did not use the word racism.
You based it on parity of numbers in any school where a majority of children qualify for a free or reduced lunch.
Right, and we talk about free and reduced lunch because that's a stand-in for poverty. And typically when you have children that are coming from an economically disadvantaged background, those families are typically more in crisis, and it's harder for those parents to focus on their children's education. And it creates an atmosphere where those children are coming to school not necessarily ready to learn. And so, for example, at one of our elementary schools downtown, Snipes Elementary, over 96% of those children are economically disadvantaged, and it makes for a very difficult teaching environment in that school. And because of the housing patterns in New Hanover County,
it's called de facto segregation.
It is de facto segregation.
Where people tend to congregate in neighborhoods with their own race.
Exactly, their own race, or, you know, obviously.
Is that by choice, or is that by The way socialization.
I don't know. Actually, I was looking at some data on incomes for black families versus white families in New Hanover County, and black families have their average income, yearly income, is half that of a white family. So it may be, an economic component to it as well, because they're going to places, they're moving to places or living in places where it's more, reasonable for them. They can afford that. So in New Hanover County, if we use that neighborhood school concept, then we do isolate people of race, and we isolate those that are economically disadvantaged. So we create schools of high poverty and also schools of low poverty. And that's what I am against doing, because what we look at, or what we see, is as a disparate impact on our students who are minorities and students who are economically disadvantaged. Their test scores are considerably lower.
And then there's the issue of successful or failing as far as a school is concerned.
Right.
And there's a high level of what they call failing schools, where youngsters of this socioeconomic group are clustered. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say. I believe it's at at Freeman Elementary. The proficiency rate for minority children there, I think, is around 14, versus like at Ogden Elementary, where you have, I think, 12% minorities. The proficiency rate is, it's at 80, I believe. So there's only like a 2% gap between white students and black students at Ogden versus a 46% gap between white and black students at Freeman.
Who determines if a school is successful or failing?
Well, and that's certainly a label that people put on schools. But what you're looking at is the No Child Left Behind Act requires us to do end of grade testing. You'll hear people refer to EOGs, and it starts in third grade. And so whether or not a school is deemed successful or not successful is based on those EOG scores that are taken at the end of each school year, and those get reported. And in fact, your viewers can go online to the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. They have I think it's ncreportcards.org, and all of this data is online.
And I've seen that. There have been some who have suggested that the system fix failing schools rather than change the attendance makeup of that particular school to fix the problem. What are your thoughts on that?
One thing I do want to address, that you'll hear people say, oh, you're just trying to shift the numbers around in order to hide those students that are failing. And under No Child Left Behind, what you're looking at is different student subgroups. And if a subgroup fails to make their proficiency level, then that's what causes a school to fail. Well, it takes 40 students in a subgroup. A subgroup would be black or white or economically disadvantaged, Native American, and so forth. So if you have 40 students in that subgroup and they fail to make that proficiency rate, then you will see that school fail. So you can't hide with No Child Left Behind certain students unless you have such a small number, you have less than 40 of that subgroup in a school. And then also as a district as a whole, we're looked at as a whole school, and we'll look at different subgroups. And if we don't make pass that EOG proficiency rates as a district, then we can also fail as a district. And in fact, we're in level 3 improvement as a district.
We're going to hold right there and come back. When we come back, we'll talk about terms. Has the term socioeconomic replaced more racially charged terms? We'll talk about that and more with Elizabeth Renball when we come back. Stay with us.